My husband and I live on 2 acres in southern Michigan. We raise chickens and have been learning how to grow our own food. We've been away for 4 days and I haven't been out here since I got home. We just got back a little bit ago. Let's take a look around and see how everything's doing. I'm growing purple potted pole beans on this trellis, and I love how they cover a trellis. They're pretty amazing. I've got a lot of beans on here that I need to harvest, and what I love about these beans is even when they're big like this, they still taste really good. I don't like to pick them when they're bulging with beans. I think that one's a little bit bulging. If they're flat, no matter how big they get, if they're still flat, they're really good. And then I'll even pick them at this size. That's kind of the ideal size there, but they're still really good. My loofah was really slow to get going. It has some fruit started. It doesn't look like anything's been pollinated yet. I love that it's filling out this trellis late in the season because pretty soon these beans are going to start to die back. It's just that time of the year, and it'll be nice to have this second trellis a little bit more full. Well, this was a pork chop yellow slicer tomato, and it has succumbed to a leaf spot disease, and this is what happens when something like this is ignored. We've been gone for 4 days. I expected to see some of this happening when I got back. Peppers are doing good. This is a poblano pepper. This granny cantrell is doing well. This is a red slicer tomato. And I've got a lot of bell peppers that are almost ready to pick. My Tabasco peppers are doing great. They've got a ton of peppers coming on. Got some jalapeno peppers out here that are close to harvest. Another poblano pepper and a ton of basil. My cayenne peppers are starting to turn red. This netting is full of Brussels sprouts and some curly Scotch kale. It had a bunch of red Russian kale in here too, and I hacked it all back early in the season and it's now rejuvenated. But this will be where I'm planting garlic in October. So I'll let this go until then and pull it out for the garlic. Oh, I've got a ton of tomatoes to pick. I've got some leaf spot happening over here too. This usually happens when it gets really humid, which it's been. And once it starts, it will spread to other tomato plants near, certainly if they're touching. I've lost a lot of leaves on these already. Sometimes if you catch it early enough, you can pinch back the leaves and it won't spread. If you've got a plant that's really bad, you can just pull the entire plant out, and that can sometimes stop the progression of the disease and stop it from spreading. So good. Oh wow, I've got an eggplant ready. That's beautiful. That's my first eggplant of the year. This cherry tomato plant over here was starting to show some signs of disease before I left, so I pulled it over here in isolation. This is a wild pot of dill, and I had a couple of swallowtail caterpillars on here. So I stopped picking the dill so they would have plenty to eat. Looks like I've got some Kalima beans down there, which is a really tasty French style green bean. These are Blueberries cherry tomatoes, and they have purple shoulders. They're a very tasty, fun tomato to grow. My favorite cherry tomato though is definitely Sun Golds. Looks like I'll be picking a bunch of cherry tomatoes. Got some chamomile here ready to harvest. That looks beautiful. I have more cayenne peppers over here growing out of this green stalk. And when I planted these peppers, I had some bush beans in 2 of these tiers that really shaded out everything else that was growing in here. And I love how these cayenne peppers just adapted to that. They grew down instead of up and reached out for the sun, and now they're doing great. I have a ton of cherry tomatoes back here in these containers, and I've got a bunch of these atomic grape tomatoes ready. Oh, that one's split. Here's the one that's ready that might not be split. They get beautiful streaking of all different colors. They're a very tasty tomato and just really fun, pretty. I always do that. I pick stuff when I don't have hands to carry it or a basket to put it in. All of these containers are looking great. My pumpkins are doing good. I've got some sugar pie pumpkins in here. Some butternut squash. This plant is taking on some powdery mildew. That's what that is. And how I'm going to deal with that is I'll cut that leaf off at the stem, down at the base of the stem, and get rid of it. Because it's not really widespread, that's probably all I'm going to do at this point, but I'll keep an eye on it. If it starts to spread to a lot of the leaves, I will spray the entire plant with neem oil to try to combat the spread of that. The sun gold is crazy reaching across the aisle. I love that. Now something ate this patch of violas. I had a patch of violas here that have been doing great all season, and before we left I noticed something ate them, and now I'm seeing more munching happening. Oh, this is great. This sun gold, it's showing some disease on some of its leaves, so I'll just chop that branch off right here at the stem, and I'll burn this. This will go in the burn pit, not in the compost, and that should stop that from spreading. There's a little bit on this Better Boy back here, probably because they're touching. Not probably, definitely because they're touching. I've got some nata pino, or some habanadas, which is a habanero without the heat, growing in this green stalk on the back side. I have been really pleased with the size of these Cipolla tomatoes. It's a Roma style paste tomato, and they're really huge tomatoes as far as Romas go. I was expecting something much smaller. So quite a few of these plants down these rows have some leaf spot happening. I'll probably trim off all of those branches and spray what's left with some hydrogen peroxide solution. I planted some peas before I left, and those are coming up already. Peas are great. They prefer the cool weather. They're a lot sweeter in the cool weather, but they will sprout and thrive in the heat when they start, like when they get going. This Sapola tomato has some leaf spot happening. There's a bunch of ground cherries down there ready to harvest. They're a little fruit that grows in a paper husk, kind of like a tomatillo, but they're a sweet little fruit. It is just a wild mess out here, so I'll be harvesting a bunch of these tomatoes and ground cherries. Oh, I've got a lot of tomatillos that fell. That's unfortunate. And something was in here eating them. I wonder what was in here eating them. This muncher cucumber has really been struggling most of its life, and now I've got peas coming up on this trellis, so I'm going to be pulling this cucumber out of here. My Armenian long has done so well, and now it's kind of winding down also. And as sad as I am to see all of this warm weather abundance die back, I'm excited for the fall season and what's to come. We still have over 60 days of growing season left this year, and it's really enough time to do a lot of things. I'll be re-sowing some cucumbers. You can start summer squash now and get a harvest before the frost comes. I have a few of those plants started again. This Desi squash has a squash back there, but for the most part it's pretty much finished producing. These Thornburg's terracotta tomatoes are looking fantastic. And they're almost ready to harvest. They take on a deep orange color, hence the name terracotta. So they ripen to the color of a terracotta pot. I also started sowing beans into empty spaces, so I've got some bush beans coming up there just to see how they do. They did so well in the containers. I've never had good luck growing them in the ground though. These wild plants are Rondini summer squash. It's a cue ball variety of zucchini, and I'm not seeing any fruit on these plants either. My teddy bear sunflowers have seen better days for sure. It almost looks like I might have had a bunny in here while we were gone. I don't know, we'll see what these beans look like back here, because that's usually where they go to first. My melons are coming along. There's a Moon and Stars melon and a little baby one hanging off of that sunflower. How cute. I've got some midget melons over there ready to harvest. Oh, yep, something was in here munching. So I lost all of these beans that were on this trellis, which I is fine. I'll plant some peas there. Something was taste testing in here, and I'm pretty sure it was a rabbit. My poor winter squash has succumbed to squash vine borer. I believe we will get a few of these, which is great because I'm the only one that likes squash generally. And this will be plenty for me, along with that couple of butternut squash that are growing over there. I've also got a honey nut squash. I'll show you that one. Okay, so I had peas coming up all down this drip line, and it looks like those were eaten. And I know bunnies love peas, so that's probably what happened here. Here's some powdery mildew, and this is a little bit more widespread on this plant. So in addition to cutting all of these leaves off that are showing signs of that, I'll spray the remaining plant with some BT. I'm sorry, not BT, with neem oil. I just need to keep it alive long enough for these squash to fully ripen on the vine. What'll happen is the stem will get really dry, and then you know that it's time to harvest. But they're close. They're close. Well, that's a bummer that I lost some peas, but not super devastating. I'm going to re-sow that line. We've got plenty of time for them to come in. This is that honey nut squash, which is a miniature butternut squash. This one's starting to turn. Winter squash is tough because it takes so long to ripen, and it has to ripen on the vine. And throughout its life cycle, it is likely to encounter squash vine borer pressure, powdery mildew, and they sometimes require a lot of due diligence. My noodle beans are really awesome. I love how fairy tale-like they are growing on this trellis. Somehow I ended up with a cross. I did grow homestead pole beans with red noodle beans last year, and I thought I had planted new seeds from an envelope, but apparently I sowed saved seeds because some of the noodle beans are coming in green, and then some of them are red, like they're supposed to be. These Chinese red noodle beans are amazing sauteed. They're not great boiled. They can be kind of rubbery, but they freeze really well. And what's cool about the red noodle beans is they keep their color even after they're cooked. Most colored green beans will turn green once they're cooked. Some of my poblano peppers are getting to a really awesome size. And that is exciting because I love chile rellenos. It's the reason I grow poblano peppers. This is the backside of that purple bean teepee that the bunnies munched through and killed. I've got a Parisian pickling cucumber plant over here that's been struggling, and this one over here is a muncher. And it's a really interesting variety of cucumber. The skin is really smooth, and it has some tiny little spines, but not like a regular cucumber. The sunflowers definitely are stealing the show in the garden right now. And I'm so excited for the fall garden. I've got the second wave of my ever-bearing strawberries coming on right now, and that's been super fun. These are much bigger this second harvest, and they're so sweet. Not a lot of these are making it out of the garden. This is a Paul Robeson tomato. This is a really delicious variety. It kind of gives a smoky flavor, and this is pretty much ready right here. It maintains its green shoulders and gets like a rusty red color, and that's a really good tomato. I'm not really sure what happened here. I may have lost some footage of the end of this tour. I can't believe I would have ended filming without saying goodbye, but that is all of the footage I have of my last summer garden tour. In the weeks following, I hugged my silverleaf sunflowers a bunch, and I took advantage of the warm weather by cleaning up some things in the garden that I knew I wouldn't want to tackle in the cold. These beans, oh man, they played their role so well as the stately entrance to my beautiful summer garden, but it was time for them to go. They were still so beautiful at this point, but their production had pretty much wrapped up, and the frost-hardy crops I planted at the base of this trellis were ready for the September sun. It's important not to disturb the soil too much when growing in no-dig beds, which is why I was cutting these peppers at the soil line instead of pulling them out by the roots. I was so glad I did that because these pepper plants began to grow shoots out of the stubby stems, and I actually dug them up, put them in some pots, and I'm attempting to overwinter them in my attached garage for a head start next summer. I'll keep you posted on this project. Thank you so much for hanging out with me in my garden today. Please join me on my next video of the first fall garden tour.